I never expected my transfer to the company's rural logistics office to be more than a quiet December in the country. The sprawling fields and low-hanging fog were supposed to be a relief from the chaos of the city, a chance to finally focus on reports and spreadsheets. But the first week, while going through storage boxes in the office basement, I stumbled upon something I wasn't meant to see. A dusty, leather-bound notebook lay hidden beneath stacks of old ledgers and office supplies. Its pages were filled with handwritten entries, names, times, coordinates, and occasionally sketches of people I vaguely recognized from the company directory. At first, I thought it was some eccentric manager's personal diary. But the more I read, the more I realized it detailed surveillance. Employees had been followed, noted down, observed in ways that went far beyond HR concerns. Some entries even mentioned packages being delivered at odd hours, often by employees who never came up in official rosters. I laughed nervously at first. Surely it was some kind of prank or leftover bookkeeping experiment gone weird. But that evening, while checking emails in the nearly empty office, I felt the first prickling of fear. From the corner of my eye, the reflection of someone standing behind the glass of the conference room door. When I turned, the hallway was empty. My stomach twisted. Over the next few days, strange things escalated. I would find envelopes slid under my office door with notes like, "Stop looking," or, "Not everything should be uncovered." Files on my computer would mysteriously close when I glanced at them, and my badge access logs showed I had supposedly entered rooms I hadn't touched in weeks. The notebook had warned me in no uncertain terms: some people were being watched, and those who dug too deep disappeared, or worse. On the 5th night before Christmas, I stayed late, determined to photograph the notebook and get a copy off-site. The office was silent, snow piling against the windows, muting the distant hum of the highway. I could hear the faint scraping of shoes across the tile floors. My heart jumped every time a shadow moved near the stairwell. Whoever had left those notes was still here. Waiting. Watching. Then, from the corner of the room, the faint glow of a monitor flickered on by itself. A camera feed, pointed straight at my desk. The chilling realization hit me like ice. They knew I had found the notebook. Someone had been recording everything. Someone was tracking me in real time. My hands shook as I grabbed the notebook and my laptop, stuffing them into my backpack. Every instinct screamed to leave immediately, but even the thought of walking down the dark hallway made my skin crawl. I decided to take the back exit, the one that led into the woods behind the office. Snow crunched under my boots as I ducked beneath the yellowed "Employees Only" sign, backpack heavy on my shoulder. The cold bit through my coat, but adrenaline kept me moving. I kept glancing behind me, expecting a figure to emerge from the office windows, or headlights from a car to sweep across the snow. Halfway to the tree line, I stumbled upon a small clearing and froze. Fresh footprints led straight from the office back door, too large, too deliberate to belong to anyone else. My mind raced. Were they waiting for me outside? Had they anticipated I would take the back route? I sank behind a snow-dusted shrub, barely daring to breathe, and watched as a shadow detached itself from the building. A man. Tall, wearing a heavy coat and gloves, moving slowly toward the tree line. I backed away, stepping over branches and snapping twigs underfoot. The man stopped, tilting his head, listening. My stomach dropped. Whoever they were, they knew the terrain. And they weren't leaving me alone. I ducked behind a fallen log and started digging through my backpack, hoping I could at least get the files uploaded to a cloud server before they caught me. Footsteps multiplied. Another person joined him, then a third. They were communicating in low whispers I couldn't make out, but the tone was sharp, urgent. I realized that the company wasn't just keeping track of employees. They were controlling them, using this isolated office as a staging ground for operations no one outside this place could understand. And I had stumbled onto something dangerous. The wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of a car engine idling at the edge of the property. Panic surged. I ran, following the faint glow of the highway lights in the distance. The crunching behind me grew louder. They were chasing. Every shadow in the dark forest seemed to reach out for me. A gust of wind caught the notebook in my hands, nearly ripping it from my grasp. I clutched it tighter, praying I could make it to safety. Finally, I burst onto the road, nearly colliding with a truck rounding the bend. I waved frantically, and the driver stopped, horror etched on his face as he saw my red-cheeked, breathless expression and the snow-covered notebook. I jumped in without waiting, heart pounding in my ears. The forest and office faded behind us, but I knew it wasn't over. Somewhere out there, they were still watching, still waiting. That night, I filed reports with authorities, handed over copies of the notebook, and tried to sleep under the hum of city lights. But I could still feel the eyes, the cameras, the footsteps echoing in the snowy halls. The company I had trusted wasn't just an office. It was a machine, quietly running illegal operations under the guise of routine work. And every December since, I check over my shoulder, convinced that someone is still tracking me, counting on my curiosity to get me back into the dark. December in the city has a strange way of hiding danger. The streets glow with holiday lights, people laugh their way out of restaurants, and everything feels warmer than it should in the middle of winter. That night 9 years ago, I walked out of an expensive Italian place with my coworkers, cheeks flushed from wine and laughter, feeling like the world was finally opening for me. I should have stayed with the group. I should have waited for someone to walk with me. But I wanted to prove I was independent, confident, unshakable. I remember the cold hitting me first, a knife blade wind that cut straight through my coat. My car was parked on a side street, and instead of circling the block, I decided to take the shortcut behind the restaurant. The alley looked harmless from the entrance. Just a straight shot to the glow of the street on the other end. But the deeper I walked, the more the shadows stretched across the ground. My heels clicked on wet pavement, sharp little echoes that drew attention to every step I took. The restaurant's back floodlight barely reached me, leaving most of the alley swallowed in darkness. 10 steps in, I heard another sound, footsteps behind me. Quick. Purposeful. I sped up. They sped up too. Before I could turn, a hand clamped over my mouth, and an arm yanked my wrist so violently my knees buckled. My heel snapped with a loud crack that echoed like a gunshot. I was dragged sideways into a hollow behind a dumpster, my back slamming into cold brick. The air smelled like grease and rotting vegetables. A man in a ski mask leaned in close enough that I could feel each of his ragged breaths. His gloved hand stayed fixed over my mouth. His other hand dug painfully into my wrist. His voice was low, practiced, almost bored. Hold still. Another voice came from the alley entrance, higher, nervous. She's another one from the office party. Hurry. That sentence hollowed me out from the inside. Another one. They had been watching us through the restaurant windows, tracking who wore jewelry, who left alone, who was too buzzed to notice danger. I wasn't unlucky. I was selected. The man holding me ripped my purse off my shoulder, sending its contents spilling across the ground. My phone was tossed away like trash. His hands searched my pockets, my coat, my sleeves. And then he saw my earrings, my grandmother's pearls. He reached for them. Instinct broke through my terror. I bit down on the hand covering my mouth, hard enough to taste blood. He screamed. His grip loosened. I ran. I made it 3 steps before something slammed into the back of my skull, sending me sprawling onto broken glass. My palms skidded open. My vision blurred. Someone grabbed my hair, jerking my head back so sharply tears shot from my eyes. The man I'd bitten was furious, cursing, blood dripping from his torn hand. He tore one earring from my ear, white-hot pain exploding across the side of my head. I screamed, the sound ripping raw from my throat. That scream saved my life. The lookout panicked. "Leave it! Someone's gonna come! Leave it!" The masked men bolted through a gap in a chain-link fence. And suddenly I was alone, bleeding, shaking, kneeling in filth. But I wasn't safe. Not really. Not for a long time. I don't remember getting to my feet. All I remember is stumbling toward the streetlight like it was the only safe thing left in the world. A couple walking their dogs spotted me first. The woman gasped and reached for her phone, The man wrapped his jacket around my shoulders. I must have looked unrecognizable. Mascara smeared, blood streaked down my neck, dress torn. People shouted. Someone ran back into the restaurant. Someone else called 911. Then Gloria, my manager, came rushing out, her face draining of color. She held my shoulders, telling me I was okay, repeating the words as if saying them enough times might make them true. The police arrived before the ambulance. As I tried to explain what happened, halting, shaking, skipping over parts one couldn't process, the female officer's expression changed the second I mentioned another one from the office party. I didn't understand why until later. By the time the paramedics loaded me into the ambulance, I knew. I was the third attack in under an hour. Sandra from marketing had been jumped 2 blocks away. Craig from IT had been beaten near the parking garage. All of us staggered out from the same glowing restaurant, drifting into the dark edges of downtown like moths wandering out of the light. At the hospital, a nurse cleaned my torn ear. A doctor examined the back of my head. Gloria sat in a chair beside my bed without leaving for a second. I only realized how badly I was shaking when she reached for a cup of water, and I couldn't hold it steady. Around 3 a.m., a detective named Franklin came to take my statement. He had the exhausted posture of someone who'd seen far too much of the world. He listened carefully as I described the ski masks, the voices, the stolen jewelry, the torn skin on the man's hand. When I finished, he sat back with a sigh. "For the last 2 weeks," he said, "someone's been targeting holiday dinners. Watching from outside, following guests, waiting for them to be alone. They weren't muggers. They were a team. A coordinated operation. 6 corporate parties hit before ours. Almost 40 victims. Tens of thousands stolen. And yet, no one had gotten a good enough look at them, until me. The bite mark I left on that man's hand turned out to be the key. 11 days later, a pawn shop owner called the police after someone tried to sell a single pearl earring that matched the description the department had circulated. When they arrested him, the bite was still healing. He confessed immediately, terrified, giving up the rest of the crew, 5 men in total, 2 of them barely adults, the others older and far colder. They'd been slipping through alleys and back streets like predators built from shadow and timing. They went to prison. I survived. But something about me didn't. 9 years later, I still can't walk near an alley mouth without my pulse tightening. I still scan reflections in restaurant windows for people watching from the darkness. Every December, every office party, every cheerful night out, I feel the echo of that alley behind me, colder than winter air. Survival doesn't erase memory. It just teaches you to move differently through the world. The glow of celebration hides a lot of things. But shadows? Shadows hide even more. December has a way of making the world quieter, too quiet, sometimes. Out here on the northern edge of Ridgevale County, silence settles on the fields like a second layer of frost. My family had driven east to visit relatives for the week, leaving me behind with a fever I pretended wasn't as bad as it was. The house, an old farmhouse built before anyone bothered keeping records, creaked with its own winter aches. I thought the night would be uneventful. Boring, even. I was wrong. Around midnight, after choking down cold medicine that made my head feel buoyant and hollow, I heard something strange, a soft thud near the wall behind the bedroom dresser. At first I thought it was just the heat settling, but it came again, sharper this time, followed by something sliding inside the wall. Curiosity, and a spike of adrenaline, pushed my exhaustion aside. I dragged the dresser forward, coughing through the effort, and found a square panel cut into the drywall. Crude, deliberate. Behind it, wrapped in burlap that smelled like old barns and rainwater, was a notebook. The cover was black, flaky at the edges, and stiff from cold. Inside were dozens of pages filled with small, cramped handwriting. My address appeared on the first page, circled several times. Beneath it were dates, recent ones, and crude sketches of my house and surrounding fields. Other addresses followed, each marked with checkmarks, question marks, or a single red slash across the page. The final page made my stomach knot. December 22nd to 28th. Family confirmed leaving. Entry window, 0200 to 0330. It was December 23rd. I told myself it had to be a prank. Maybe something left behind by the previous owner. Maybe some bored teenager with too much time and too little brain. But the handwriting was methodical, intentional. It looked like the kind of notes someone takes when they've done something more than once. I shoved the notebook back into the panel and tried to forget it existed. But fever has a way of magnifying bad thoughts and shrinking good ones. Every sound in the house felt amplified. Every gust of wind seemed to press against the windows. Then, at 2:11 a.m., I heard voices. They drifted through the heating vent like fog, low, quick, whispering in patterns I couldn't make out. Boots crunched on frozen ground outside. A faint beam of a flashlight swept across my window. Someone tested the back door. The handle clicked softly, like a polite guest trying not to disturb the host. I froze, gripping the bed frame to steady my unsteady hands. This was no prank. This was preparation. And someone had decided tonight was the night to act on it. I didn't dare turn on a light. Instinct, or fear, took over. I backed into the closet, easing the door almost shut, leaving a sliver for sight and air. My pulse drummed in my ears. Fever made everything feel unreal, like the edges of the world were smudged. The voices outside hushed. Footsteps shifted. A low metallic clank came from the back porch, followed by the unmistakable snap of a lock giving way. They were inside my house. My phone screen glowed faintly from the nightstand across the room. Too far to reach. Too bright to grab without exposing myself. I cursed under my breath, pressing deeper into the coats hanging around me. One of them brushed my cheek with the cold scent of pine detergent. It smelled like normal life, something suddenly foreign. Downstairs, drawers opened. Cabinets closed. Someone spoke in a clipped voice. Quick sweep. Keep your light low. The truck passes again at 2:40. A truck? Was there someone waiting outside? How long had this been happening in Ridgevale? How many homes had these people moved through? The notebook's list flashed in my mind, addresses with slashes and checkmarks. Operations completed. More planned. A floorboard groaned under heavy boots. They were coming up the stairs. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste metal. My breath wheezed with each inhale, the fever thickening every sound. Through the crack in the closet door, I saw the long beam of a flashlight sweep across the bedroom, pausing on the crumpled blanket I'd left on the bed. A voice murmured, "Someone was here recently." Another answered, "House was marked empty. Keep moving." My chest tightened, pressure building. The cough hit me before I could stop it, a violent, wet, uncontrollable explosion of sound that tore through the stillness. Everything froze. The flashlight beam shot toward the closet. I clamped a hand over my mouth, but the second cough ripped out anyway, louder, uglier. Fever rattled my lungs like broken machinery. I sounded diseased, dangerous, contagious. "Back up," one of them hissed. "He's sick. We don't have the gear for this," another snapped. "Pull out. Now." The beam flicked away. Footsteps retreated fast, pounding down the hallway. Someone cursed. Another shouted for the others to move. A door slammed. Snow crunched outside. An engine rumbled to life somewhere near the tree line. And then silence. I stayed in the closet long after they left, shaking so hard the coats swayed around me. When I finally crawled out, the room spun. I managed to dial for help only after 3 tries. Deputies found tracks in the snow, tool marks on the back door, and, strangest of all, tire impressions leading into the woods instead of the road. They never found the truck. They never found the notebook's owner. I still hear things at night, soft footsteps on cold ground, pages rustling inside walls, whispered breaths sliding through the vents. Whatever operation was happening out here, I don't think it's done. I think they're still watching.